The signal came at 3 in the morning, ship time. Lieutenant Yoon Hana sat alone in the communications room of the UEN Resolute, her eyes tired from hours of watching empty screens. She was about to get coffee when her console made a sound she had never heard before. It was weak. It was broken. But it was real. Hana's fingers moved fast across the controls. The signal was coming from far away, from a part of space that humans rarely visited. She cleaned up the noise, removed the static, and slowly a voice began to form. It was not human. It was soft and musical, like wind through glass bells, and it was crying. "Please," the voice said in broken galactic common. "Anyone, we are dying. The Kresh have come. Our world burns. Please, help us." Hana's blood went cold. She knew about the Kresh. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Kresh. They were hunters. They did not conquer worlds for land or resources. They conquered worlds for meat, for living bodies to harvest. She ran to wake Captain Park Suho. The captain was a man in his late 40s, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen many battles. He listened to the recording 3 times without speaking. His face showed nothing, but Hana could see his hands tighten into fists. "The Valari," he said quietly. "I know of them. They are artists, poets. They have never fought a war in their entire history." He paused. "They have no weapons, no army, nothing." "Sir, what do we do?" "Send this to Galactic Concord Command, Priority 1. The response came 4 hours later. Hana read it aloud to the captain and the senior officers gathered in the briefing room. Her voice was flat, trying to hide her anger. "The Galactic Concord has reviewed the situation regarding the Valari homeworld. Due to complex political relationships with the Kresh Dominion and the lack of strategic importance of the Valari system, the Concord has voted for non-intervention. Member species are advised to avoid the conflict zone." Silence filled the room. Sergeant Kim Do-hyun, the leader of the ship's Marines, was a huge man with gentle eyes. He broke the silence first. "They are going to let them die. All of them. Because it is not important enough." "The Valari are peaceful," said Dr. Bayek Jisoo, the ship's medical officer. "They create beautiful music, beautiful art. They have done nothing wrong except exist near Kresh space." Captain Park stood up slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. For a long moment, he said nothing. Everyone watched him, waiting. "I joined the Navy 40 years ago," he said, his voice soft. "I was young, stupid, full of dreams. I thought we would explore the stars and find wonders." He turned to face his crew. "I found wonders, but I also found this. I found that the galaxy is full of species who will watch innocents burn and do nothing because it is not their problem." He looked at each officer one by one. "I am tired of that galaxy. I am tired of watching. Someone asked for help. To me, that is enough." He straightened his shoulders. "I am taking this ship to Valari space. Anyone who wishes to leave may do so. There will be no punishment. I will not order anyone to come with me on what may be a suicide mission." No one moved. Sergeant Kim smiled, though his eyes were hard. "Captain, with respect, you could not make us leave." Hana felt tears in her eyes. "I decoded that signal, sir. I heard her voice. I am coming." One by one, every officer nodded. Captain Park allowed himself a small smile. "Then let us go save some people." The Resolute turned toward the stars. In the engine room, the jump drive began to power up, filling the ship with a deep hum. On the bridge, Hana sent one last message to the Valari frequency, hoping someone could still hear. "This is the human ship Resolute. We heard your call. We are coming. Hold on." Far away on a burning world, Ambassador Lirasol heard the message through the static of her broken communicator. She was hiding in the ruins of what had been her city, surrounded by the bodies of her people, their soft glow fading in death. She had sent her cry for help, expecting nothing. The galaxy never helped the weak, but someone had answered. She did not know what humans were. She had only heard stories. They called them Deathworlders because they came from a planet that tried to kill them every day. A world of poison, predators, and death. A world that should not produce intelligent life. But it had. And now those Deathworlders were coming. Lyrasol looked up at the burning sky and, for the first time in days, felt something she had forgotten how to feel. Hope. The Resolute dropped out of hyperspace into hell. Captain Park Suho stood on the bridge and looked at what remained of Seraph Prime. The beautiful planet was covered in smoke and fire. Orbital stations floated in pieces, their metal bodies broken and burned. Ships hung dead in space, their lights dark forever. And descending through the atmosphere like hungry insects were dozens of Kresh harvester ships. "My God," whispered Ensign Lee Min-ho, the young weapons officer. He was 22 years old. This was his first real mission. His hands were shaking. "Steady," said Captain Park. His voice was calm, like stone. "We have work to do." Lieutenant Yoon Hana was scanning the surface. "Captain, I am reading Valari life signs. Thousands of them. They are gathered in the northern continent near the capital city." She paused, her face going pale. "But there are also Kresh forces all around them. They are being collected." Everyone knew what that meant. The Kresh did not take prisoners. They took meat. "3 patrol ships coming toward us," reported Min-ho, his voice steadier now. "Kresh fighters. They have seen us." "Good," said the captain. "Let them see. All weapons ready. Target the lead ship." The Kresh patrol leader sent a message. It came through the speakers in harsh, clicking sounds that the translator turned into words. "Unknown vessel. This system belongs to the Kresh Dominion. Leave now or be destroyed." Captain Park pressed the transmit button. "This is Captain Park Suho of the United Earth Navy. The Valari called for help. We answered. You will stop your attack and leave this system." Silence. Then laughter, if the strange clicking sound could be called laughter. "One ship? One small ship thinks it can stop the Dominion? Humans are strange creatures. But you will make good additions to our harvest." "Fire!" said Captain Park. The Resolute's main guns spoke. The lead Kresh ship exploded in a ball of fire before they could even raise shields. The other 2 ships tried to run. They did not make it. On the surface, Sergeant Kim Do-yun led his Marines out of the landing craft and into a nightmare. The air smelled like blood and smoke. Buildings that had once been beautiful were now broken shells. And everywhere, were bodies. Valari bodies. Their soft, glowing skin was dark in death. Private Shin Tae-woo, a young man who had volunteered for this mission, stopped to look at a small body. A child. A Valari child. No bigger than a human baby lying in the street. "Keep moving," said Kim Do-yun, putting a hand on his shoulder. "We cannot help the dead. We can help the living." They found the living in a processing facility at the edge of the city. Dr. Baek Jisoo came with them, and what she saw there would give her nightmares for years. The Kresh had built machines. Terrible machines. Valari were being put into them alive and coming out as materials, compounds, products. Their screams filled the building like a song of pure pain. "No," said Kim Do-yun, and his voice was no longer gentle. It was cold. It was the voice of death itself. "No more." The Kresh guards turned to face them. They were large, insect-like creatures covered in hard shells. They carried weapons made for killing soft things. They had never faced humans before. They learned quickly that humans were not soft things. Kim Do-yun moved like water, like fire, like something between a dancer and a hurricane. His rifle sang its deadly song, and Kresh fell. When his gun ran empty, he used his hands. When a Kresh warrior thought its size would give it advantage, it learned that humans from Deathworlds do not care about size. They care about winning. In 3 minutes, it was over. 17 Kresh guards were dead. No human had fallen. Dr. Bayek ran to the machines and began freeing the survivors. The Valari looked at the humans with huge, glowing eyes full of fear and wonder. They had never seen creatures like this. Creatures who fought like monsters but touched the wounded with such gentle hands. "You are safe now," said the doctor in Galactic Common, her voice soft. "We are here to help." Above the planet, the Resolute fought alone against wave after wave of Kresh ships. Captain Park knew they could not win. There were too many enemies, and help was too far away. But every minute they fought was another minute for Marines to save lives. "Captain," said Hana, "the Kresh flagship is sending a message to their main fleet. Reinforcements are coming." "Then we will hold until they arrive," said Park. "And we will keep holding." He opened a channel to all frequencies. His voice went out to every ship, every communicator, every surviving Valari. "This is Captain Park Suho of the United Earth Navy. To the Kresh Dominion. This world is under human protection now. Leave, or we will remove you. To the Valari. Hold on. Help is coming. I promise you, help is coming." On the Kresh flagship, Warlord Thax Vorn received the reports of his losses with growing anger. One ship, one small human ship, had killed dozens of his warriors and destroyed multiple vessels. "What manner of creature is this?" he demanded. None of his officers had an answer, but they would learn. They would all learn. The message spread across human space like fire. On Earth, people watched the news and saw Captain Park's face as he made his stand. They saw the burning world behind him. They heard his voice. "This world is under human protection now." And something old woke up inside them. Something ancient. Something that remembered when humans were prey on their own world and had to fight every day just to survive. They were not prey anymore. But they had not forgotten what it felt like. Admiral Choi Yuna sat in her office at 3rd Fleet Command when the report arrived. She was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back tight and eyes like black ice. 30 years ago, Kresh raiders had attacked a human colony ship. Her husband had been on that ship. They had never found his body. She read the report once, twice, 3 times. Then she smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Finally," she said to the empty room. Within hours, she was addressing the entire 3rd Fleet, 47 warships, 20,000 sailors and Marines, the pride of the United Earth Navy. "You have seen what the Kresh are doing," she said. "You have seen what one ship, the Resolute, is doing to stop them. Captain Park acted without orders because he knew that some things matter more than orders. He knew that when the innocent cry for help, someone must answer." She paused. "The Galactic Concord has condemned our intervention. They say we are breaking rules. They say we are risking war." Her voice hardened. "Let me tell you what I think about their rules. Their rules let children be turned into meat while politicians talk. Their rules protect monsters and abandon victims. Their rules can burn." The fleet erupted in cheers. "We leave in 6 hours. The Resolute cannot hold forever. Our people are dying to buy time for those who cannot fight. We will not let them die alone. We will not let the Valari be erased from the galaxy, and we will show the Kresh what happens when they hunt the wrong prey." On the Concord station, Arbiter Zethix watched the human fleet preparing to move. Zethix had 6 limbs and eyes that could see in 12 directions at once. Zethix had lived for 200 years and seen many species rise and fall, but Zethix had never seen anything like this. A young aide came to deliver the Concord's official response to humanity's actions. "The Concord formally condemns the human intervention in Valari space. We demand that all human forces withdraw immediately and submit to diplomatic review." Admiral Choi's response was broadcast on every channel, to every species in the Concord. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned. Then condemn us. We will be busy saving lives. The transmission ended. Zethix sat in silence for a long time. Remarkable, Zethix said finally. Absolutely remarkable. Far across space, on the burning world of Seraph Prime, the Resolute was dying. The ship had taken too much damage. Half the guns were offline. The shields were failing. Captain Park had ordered all non-essential crew to the escape pods, but most had refused to leave. They would stay with their captain. They would stay with their ship. "Status report," said Park. His voice was tired but steady. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, reported Ensign Lee Minho. The young man had aged 10 years in 3 days. He was no longer shaking. Main engines at 40%, weapons at 30%, but Captain, he almost smiled. We have killed 18 of their ships. 18. And how many more are coming? Lieutenant Yoon Hana checked her screens. Her face went white. Sir, the Kresh have called their main fleet. Over 200 warships. They will be here in 12 hours. Silence fell on the bridge. 200 ships. Even at full strength, the Resolute could not fight 200 ships. In their current state, they would last minutes. Then we have 12 hours, said Captain Park. 12 hours to save as many Valari as we can. 12 hours to show the galaxy that humans do not abandon those who need them. He stood straighter. I have lived a good life. I have served with the finest crew in the Navy. If these are my last hours, I can think of no better way to spend them. On the surface, Sergeant Kim Do-hyun led his Marines in one rescue mission after another. They were exhausted, they were wounded, but every time they found more Valari survivors, they found new strength. A young Valari female approached Kim as he sat resting against a ruined wall. Her glow was dim with fear and exhaustion, but she carried a cup of water in her delicate hands. "You are hurt," she said in broken common. "Please, drink." Kim looked at the wound on his arm. He had forgotten about it. "Thank you," he said, taking the cup. "What is your name?" "Selah. You. Why do you help us?" "We are nothing to you." Kim drank the water slowly. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. "You are not nothing," he said. "You are alive. You asked for help. That is all the reason we need." Selah stared at him with her large, glowing eyes. She did not understand. Her people had always been told that the galaxy was cruel, that the strong ate the weak, that no one helped anyone without wanting something in return. But here were these humans, these Deathworlders, fighting, dying, for strangers. "You are strange creatures," she said softly. Kim laughed. It hurt his ribs, but he laughed anyway. Yes, we are." In space, the Kresh Armada was gathering. Warlord Thax Vorn stood on his flagship, surrounded by the greatest fleet ever assembled by the Dominion. 200 warships, enough to conquer worlds. Enough to erase species from history. All of this for one small ship and its stubborn crew. "The humans will die," Thax Vorn declared to his officers. "All of them. And then we will go to their homeworld and show them what happens to those who challenge the Dominion." His officers clicked their approval. But deep in the darkness of space, another fleet was moving. The human Third Fleet, led by Admiral Choi Yuna, was racing toward Seraph Prime at maximum speed. The wolves were gathering, and the galaxy was about to learn why humans were called Deathworlders. The Kresh Armada arrived at Seraph Prime like a storm of death. 200 warships blackened the sky, their weapons hot and ready. Warlord Thax Vorn stood on his command deck and looked at the broken Resolute floating in orbit. The small human ship was barely holding together. Its hull torn open, its lights flickering. "One ship," said Thax Vorn. "All of this trouble from one ship, but now it ends. All batteries, target the human vessel. Prepare to—" "Warlord," an officer interrupted, his voice shaking with something Kresh rarely felt. Fear. "New contacts! Multiple hyperspace signatures! They are coming out of jump directly behind us! The sky split open. 47 human warships burst from hyperspace in perfect formation. At their center was the dreadnought Indomitable, a ship so large it made Kresh vessels look like toys, and on its bridge stood Admiral Choi Yuna, her eyes cold as winter. "Third Fleet," she said calmly. "Attack." The Battle of Seraph Prime began. Human ships moved like wolves hunting deer. They were smaller than Kresh vessels, but faster, more agile, crewed by men and women who had grown up on a world that killed the weak and made the strong into something the galaxy had never seen before. Plasma fire filled the void. Ships exploded like dying stars. The Kresh fought back with all their fury, but they were facing something they did not understand. They were predators. They hunted. They killed. But humans did not fight like prey trying to escape. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose, like they were already dead and just wanted to take as many enemies with them as possible. On the damaged Resolute, Captain Park Suho watched the battle through cracked screens. Tears ran down his face. "They came," he whispered. "They actually came." "Captain," said Lieutenant Yoon Hana, her voice breaking with emotion, "Admiral Choi is hailing us." The Admiral's face appeared on screen. She was smiling, but her eyes were wet. "Captain Park, you held the line. You gave us time. Now rest. We will take it from here." "Admiral, thank you." "Thank me later. Over drinks. For now, watch and learn how the Third Fleet fights." On the surface, Sergeant Kim Do-hyun heard the news through his communicator. Reinforcements had arrived. The fleet was here. He looked up at the sky and saw fire falling like rain as Kresh ships died. "Marines!" he shouted. "Our people are here. Push forward. Free every Velari you can find." Fresh troops poured down from the sky, thousands of Marines in drop pods landing across the planet, hitting Kresh positions like hammers. Private Shin Tai-woo led his squad into a processing facility and fought room by room, freeing prisoners, ending monsters. Dr. Baek Jisu worked without stopping, treating wounded humans and Velari side by side. Her hands were covered in blood of two different colors. She did not care. They were all alive, and she would keep them that way. In space, the Indomitable went straight for the Kresh flagship. Warlord Thax Vorn watched the massive human ship approaching and felt something he had never felt before: doubt. "All ships, target that vessel," he ordered. "Destroy it!" Weapons fire poured into the Indomitable. The human ship took hit after hit, its shields flaring, its armor glowing red. Any other species would have retreated. Any other species would have run. Admiral Choi did not run. "Closer," she ordered. "Get me closer." The Indomitable pushed through the fire like a beast made of steel and fury. When it was close enough to see individual lights on the Kresh flagship, Admiral Choi spoke again. "Open a channel to the Kresh commander." Warlord Thax Vorn's face appeared on her screen. He looked shaken. Around him, alarms were screaming. "I am Admiral Choi Yuna of the United Earth Navy," she said. Her voice was ice. "You have one chance. Take your remaining ships and leave this system. Never return. If you stay, I will destroy every last one of you." Thax Vorn's pride rose up. He was a Kresh warlord. He had conquered worlds. He did not run from prey. "You are outnumbered, human. Your tricks will not save you. The Dominion does not retreat." Admiral Choi smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I was hoping you would say that." She cut the channel and gave one final order. "All batteries, fire everything." The Indomitable unleashed hell. Every weapon fired at once. Missiles, railguns, plasma cannons, things that had no name in any alien language. The Kresh flagship shattered like glass. Warlord Thax Vorn had 1 second to understand what humans truly were before fire consumed him. With their leader dead and their fleet broken, the surviving Kresh tried to flee. Human ships hunted them without mercy. Of 200 Kresh warships, less than 30 escaped into hyperspace. The Battle of Seraph Prime was over. On the surface, Valari came out of hiding. They looked up at the sky and saw human ships instead of Kresh ships. They saw Marines carrying their wounded, their children, their elders to safety. They saw Dr. Bak crying as she saved another life. Lieutenant Yoon Hana broadcast a message on all Valari frequencies. Her voice was gentle, warm, nothing like the warriors who had come to save them. To all Valari survivors, the Kresh are gone. You are safe now. The humans are here, and we will not leave until your world is secure. You are not alone anymore. You will never be alone again. Ambassador Lirasol heard the message from her hiding place. She had survived. Her people had survived. Because somewhere across the stars, a species called humanity had heard a cry for help and answered. She walked out into the light of the dying fires and looked up at the sky. A human dropship was landing nearby. Marines were jumping out, their faces tired but proud. She had so many questions, but only one mattered. "Why?" she asked a passing soldier. "Why did you come? Why did you fight for us?" The soldier stopped. He was young, covered in dirt and blood, exhausted beyond words. But he smiled at her. "Because you asked," he said simply. "Because you needed help. That is all the reason we need." He moved on. Lirasol stood there for a long time thinking about those words, thinking about what kind of species would cross the stars to fight and die for strangers. Deathworlders, she thought. They call them Deathworlders. Perhaps they should call them something else. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Seraph Prime. The Kresh Dominion was falling apart. After their defeat, other species they had conquered began to rise up. Civil war spread through their territory like fire. The great predators of the galaxy were now fighting each other, too busy with their own problems to threaten anyone else. On Seraph Prime, the Valari were rebuilding. Human engineers worked beside them, teaching them how to build stronger walls, better defenses, not to make them warriors, but to make sure they would never be helpless again. Captain Park Suho stood on a balcony in the new capital, looking out at a city that was coming back to life. He had been promoted to admiral after the battle, though he still felt strange using the title. They had tried to put him on trial at first. Going to Valari space without orders was technically breaking many rules, but the public outcry was so great that all charges were dropped. "You should not be standing," said a gentle voice behind him. The doctors said rest. He turned to see Lieutenant Yoon Hana walking toward him. She was no longer a lieutenant. After everything she had done, she had been chosen as the first human ambassador to the Valari. She had learned their language, their songs, their art. She had become a bridge between two peoples. "The doctors can wait," said Park. "I wanted to see this, the city, alive again." Hana stood beside him and looked out at the streets filled with Valari going about their lives. Children played in gardens, artists painted on walls, musicians filled the air with beautiful sounds. "Do you ever think about what would have happened?" she asked, "if we had not come?" "Every day," said Park, "every single day. And every day I am glad we made the choice we made." In another part of the city, Sergeant Kim Do-hyun sat in a training ground surrounded by young Valari. He had retired from combat duty after the battle. His body was too damaged for front-line work anymore. But he had found a new purpose. He was teaching the Valari to defend themselves, not to fight wars, not to conquer, but simply to protect their children, their homes, their loved ones. Basic things, important things. The Valari had given him a name in their language. It translated roughly to soft thunder. They said it was because he spoke so gently, but moved like a storm. "Mr. Thunder," said a small Valari child, tugging at his sleeve, "why do humans fight so hard? Does it not hurt?" Kim smiled and knelt down to the child's level. "It hurts very much," he said. "But some things hurt worse than pain. Watching someone you can protect get hurt. That hurts worse than anything." The child thought about this for a long time, then nodded seriously, as if understanding something important. At the Galactic Concord headquarters, Ambassador Lyra Sol stood before the assembled representatives of 100 species. She had asked to speak. What she said would change everything. "1 year ago," she began, her bioluminescent patterns glowing with emotion, "my world burned. My people died. We sent a message to the galaxy begging for help, and the galaxy, the Concord, did nothing." Uncomfortable silence filled the hall. "You had rules," continued Lyra Sol. "You had political concerns. You had excuses. And while you made excuses, children were being processed into raw materials." Her voice hardened. "But one species did not make excuses. One species heard our cry and answered. They came without being asked. They fought without being paid. They died for strangers." She turned to look at the human representatives. "The humans, the Deathworlders. You call them dangerous. You call them reckless. You condemn them for breaking your rules." She paused. "I call them heroes. When we cried for help, the galaxy looked away. The humans looked toward us. Remember that. Remember it well, because someday your world might burn. And when you cry for help, I hope the humans are listening." She walked away from the podium. The hall was silent for a long time. On Earth, Admiral Choi Yuna stood before a memorial wall. The names of every human who had died at Seraph Prime were carved into black stone. 312 names. 312 people who would never come home. Behind her, thousands of people had gathered for the anniversary ceremony. Families of the fallen, soldiers who had fought, citizens who had watched from afar and felt proud to be human. "These names," said Choi, her voice carrying across the crowd, "belong to people who made a choice. They chose to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. They chose to cross the stars and stand against monsters. They chose to die so that others could live." She touched one name on the wall. A young private who had died saving Valari children from a burning building. They did not ask what the Valari could give them. They did not ask if it was worth it. They saw suffering and they acted. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. And that is who we will always be. On Seraph Prime, a new monument stood in the center of the rebuilt capital. It was made of white stone that glowed faintly in the darkness, like Valari skin. It showed a human soldier carrying a Valari child in their arms, both looking up at the stars. Every day, Valari came to look at it. Children asked their parents what it meant. Elders told them the story of the day the sky burned and the Deathworlders came to save them. One evening, a young Valari stood before the monument with his grandmother. The old female's glow was dim with age, but her eyes were bright with memory. "Grandmother," said the child, "why did the humans come? Our teachers say we had nothing to offer them. No weapons, no technology, no power. Why would they fight for us?" The grandmother was silent for a long moment. She had been young when the creche came. She had seen the fire and the death. She had heard the message that changed everything. "We heard your call. We are coming." "Because someone asked for help," she said finally. "That is all. Someone asked for help, and they answered. To humans, that is reason enough." The child looked up at the stone soldier carrying the stone child toward the stars. He did not fully understand yet. He was too young. But someday he would. Someday every Valari child would understand what humanity had done and what it meant. Across the galaxy, the story spread. The tale of how one small ship answered a cry for help, how a fleet crossed the stars to save strangers, how Deathworlders became protectors. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Not as conquerors, not as threats, not as the monsters that some had feared, but as something far more powerful, as hope.